So the Red Wings season has officially ended after a pretty frustrating week. Even though the Wings had a really good week in terms of the record, winning 2 out of 3 games and getting 5 out of 6 points at the end of the year, it's pretty fucking frustrating how it ended. Because it's like the way the Wings were this year, it's like this was like the best week the Wings have had this season. The problem is it came after they got eliminated when it doesn't matter. So it's like, so it just really raised the question of where the hell was this all damn season? And why did they wait until now all of a sudden to show their true potential when it doesn't matter and it's already too late? Just absolutely frustrating overall. You know, it was a solid weekend, wins against Dallas and then Carolina and then New Jersey before falling to Toronto to end the season in overtime. The Toronto game was the most frustrating because the Waynes got out to a 3-1 lead. Only in the end to blow the lead and lose in overtime. Just, you know, that game against Toronto was honestly the Waynes 2024-2025 season in a nutshell. Start off strong, only for it to crash and burn at the end. Just an utter collapse. Honestly, I can't think of a more fitting way for this season to end. Just an absolutely frustrating week, you know, just a frustrating season for the Waynes. Like an absolute disappointment of a season considering how last year ended. Yeah, the Waynes have had back-to-back winning records. But here's the thing about those back-to-back winning records. They don't mean shit if you don't make the playoffs. And the Waynes haven't made the playoffs for 9 straight years. Which is now the longest playoff drought the Waynes have had in their entire franchise history. Even longer than all those years during the Dead Waynes era in the late 70s, early 80s when the team was a poorly run car crash. Yeah, when you are fucking worse than that era of the Red Wings, then something is horribly wrong here. Just very disappointing overall. Just an absolutely frustrating season, you know. Mainly waiting too damn long to fire Derek alone. And by the time Tom McClellan came in, the damage was already done. You know how I'll say this. If they brought Tom McClellan in like a month earlier, then there was a chance. And I think the Waynes could have had a shot to make the playoffs. Considering that from November 18th all the way until the December 26th, the Waynes lost 10 out of 16 games in that span. I think if you'd bring Tom McClellan in, Todd could have easily turned at least 4 or 5 of those games, 5 or 6 of those games around. So, yeah, and I think maybe instead of losing 10 out of 16 in that span, I think with Tom McClellan, you could have won 10 out of 16 in that span. And that would have been good enough to make the playoffs, where they probably would have got bitched. Let's be honest, they probably would have got bitch slapped by Washington or Toronto in the first round anyway. Just an absolutely disappointing season. Like, it's honestly regression, like, very frustrating. I think we need to start having some serious questions about what the hell Steve Yzerman's doing with the Yzer plan. Because the Yzer plan needs to have some serious questions. Especially considering now the Red Wings and now in Yzerman's tenure, the Wings have now gone and they would be the worst sports team in Detroit right now. I think it's pretty obvious the Wings are the worst team in Detroit right now. Considering that in the last calendar year alone, the Waynes are now the only Detroit team to not make the playoffs. Because in the last year alone, the Tigers, Lions, and the Pistons have all made a trip to the playoffs. The Waynes still haven't made a trip in 9 years. Hell, the other 3 Detroit teams I just mentioned, they all had rebuilds like Detroit in this time span. All 3 of them were able to get their shit together in less time than the Red Wings. Hell, look at the Pistons this year. 1 year, the Pistons went from being a 14-win embarrassment last year to winning 44 games and making the playoffs as a top 6 seed. Within 1 year with Trajan Langdon. Hell, the Tigers in 1 year with Scott Harris, Tigers went from being a mediocre punching bag to not only making the playoffs, but winning a playoff series against Houston, who's been one of the most consistent franchises in the AL in the last decade, and then taking Cleveland to the limit in 5 games. All within 1 year. Hell, look at the Detroit Lions with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. Within 3 years under Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell's leadership, The Lions went from being an NFL at the butt end of every NFL community joke to being 30 minutes away from the Super Bowl within 3 years. And also, they went from being an NFL joke and an NFL punching bag to the number 1 seed in the NFC within 4 years. And what have the Waynes accomplished in 6 years under Steve Yzerman? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. But, trust the Yzer plan and Stevie we trust. Like, honestly, all I gotta say to all the Steve bots is, when are the excuses gonna stop? The excuses gotta stop at some point. Like, it's year 6 going into year 7. There's no fucking way this team should be this fucking bad 6 years into a fucking rebuild. There is no fucking way this can happen. I mean, you could go on and talk about, how, the Waynes were in a bad spot because of Ken Holland's last 4 draft classes and how Ken Holland has put the team in such a hole. You can say that all you want. The bottom line is this. If Steve Yzerman's the great GM you Steve bots want to say he is, then it should not take 6 fucking years to repair what Ken Holland did to this team. It should not take 6 goddamn years heading into 7. And things aren't going well, considering that now Steve Yzerman is on his 3rd head coach already in this 6-year span heading into year 7. Because remember, he started off with Jeff Blashill. Then he had Derek alone for about 2.5 years. And now Todd McClellan. Yzerman's already on his 3rd head coach already. But I know the main excuse with Steve Yzerman is, he drafts well. Just look at Mark Steiner. Look at Lucas Raymond. Even Simon Edvinson. Even Costa's coming. Look at Casper. We think Stan Danielson looks promising along with Michael Nygaard and Axel Sandin Pelika. It's like, he's proven he's great at drafting. And then what? Because Steve Yzerman, he can't fucking acquire free agents if his life depended on it. Even if Chris Ilitch is handcuffing him because of how much of a cheap prick Chris Ilitch is, you still gotta be a talented enough GM to make the most out of a bad situation. And Steve Yzerman has not made the most of a bad situation. Like, the only trade he's made that's actually been good for this team was bringing in Alex DeBrincat. That's literally it. Like, his best free agent signing so far has been Patrick Kane, who's not the same Patrick Kane he was 5-10 years ago and a complete shell of himself. Like, it's not prime Patrick Kane. It's more of a shell of himself Kane. But sadly, when a washed-up Patrick Kane is the best free agent acquisition the Waynes have had so far in free agency, that's not good. That's pretty sad. Like I understand Steve Yzerman's philosophy of wanting to build this team through the draft, but that doesn't mean you should make the team mediocre as all hell until all these prospects and picks come onto the main roster. Especially considering that Yzerman, the only free agent size Yzerman makes is sign a bunch of aging vets to 1 or 2 year deals just to keep the young kids from making the roster. Like, in terms of free agent acquisitions, he's making the same mistakes that Ken Holland made in Holland's final years, when Holland would sign a bunch of aging vets to keep the young guys from making the roster. Yzerman's literally doing that here. Like, I'm not saying the guys like a Danielson or a Pellico or a Kosa or hell, even a Nygaard will turn this team around. But I would like to see what we got in them, though, instead of just waiting on a hope and a fucking prayer. Just maybe we get them on the roster and see what they got, see what they could do when given an opportunity. I mean, we've already seen them with Casper, we've seen them with Edvinson. They've looked very promising so far. But yeah, honestly, in terms of free agent moves, we need to have there needs to be a serious discussion about what the hell Yzerman's doing going forward. It's what the hell are we doing here? But let's be honest, though. No matter how much we bitch or complain about Steve Yzerman and how much of his tenure has been a fucking disaster so far, he ain't getting fired anyway because the Waynes are going to keep him around because of that loyalty thing. Because we all seen how loyalty has helped the Waynes in the past throughout the 2010s. And loyalty got the Waynes in the 2010s during the tail end of that playoff streak? a one-way ticket into the hockey hell we are in right now. It's fucking crazy how within a decade, this team has gone from hockey town to hockey hell. But yeah, just, I'd like to see some of the young kids on the roster. Like, I think Pellico should be on the roster next year. I think Sebastian Cossa 100% should be at least a backup goalie at minimum to Cam Talbot next year, because because Alex Lyon and everybody else we have backing up Cam Talbot is a fucking pylon that can't stop a fucking beach ball. At least Cossa has the potential and the talent to stop a fucking beach ball. So I would like to see Cossa make the roster. But yeah, just, frustrating way to end this season. And, just very frustrating here. Considering that the team that used to be the flag bearer, the head of the table for Detroit sports for so many years, especially with so many cup runs from the mid to late 90s and early 2000s, and has now turned into the worst team in Detroit right now. Which is fucking crazy. But yeah, even despite that, some positives we could take out of the season is that Simon Edvinsson easily looks like a top 4 defenseman. At least a top 2 pairing defenseman. He has the potential to go to top pairing under the right circumstance in the future. I would like to see him on a top pair with Moritz Seider. Especially if Axel Sandin-Pellikka comes on the roster. And because Pellikka has a lot of strong potential. I'd like to see Pellikka on the roster next year. Also, Marco Kasper, he should be our number 2 center going forward from here on out. Because he's shown a lot of great potential, showed a lot of progress this year. I like to see that. Albert Johansson, he exceeded expectations as a rookie, so I expect big things out of him in the future. Lucas Raymond proving once again why he's the best player on the team, because Raymond has gone better from last year. Lucas Raymond 100% has proven that last year was no fluke, and he built on that. So yeah, there are some promising things to keep an eye on, but despite all those positives, it's still not enough to turn things around. There needs to be some serious questions and some serious overhauling to the roster in the offseason. But Steve Yzerman will probably do nothing to the roster in the offseason, and we'll be stuck with the same damn roster going in, and we'll be right back in the same position 1 year from now. Just absolutely frustrating season. But yeah, will anybody hold Steve Yzerman accountable in the Red Wings Nation? Fuck no. Because this fan base won't bitch about Yzerman. They'll instead bitch about Jared Goff chants at Red Wings games. But by the way, to every lot of Wings fans complain about the Jared Goff chants, let me ask you a question. Weren't you the same fan base that were doing Let's Go Red Wing chants at Lions games at Ford Field in the 2000s and at the Silver Dome in the 90s? And weren't you also doing Let's Go Red Wing chants at Pistons games back when the Pistons still played at the Palace in Auburn Hills? Or are we just going to pretend none of that ever happened just so it can fit your narratives? Just wondering real quick. Because honestly, the Red Wing fans complaining about it are honestly hypocrites, considering that they did the exact same thing at other Detroit sporting events in the past. I think the Wings fans are insecure about the Lions' recent success because the Lions are no longer the butt end of every joke, and the Wings are no longer the talk of the town, as they got replaced by now three teams with a better case for a championship than the Red Wings. Because here's the sad truth, Red Wings Nation. The Lions, Tigers, and Pistons are way closer to a championship than the Red Wings right now. Although next season for the Pistons is going to be very crucial to prove that this year was no fluke. At least the Tigers right now are proving that last year was no fluke, but that's still early in the baseball season, and there's still a long ways to go. But yeah, just a pretty frustrating way to end the season. Just absolute frustration. Being a very passionate Waynes fan, I just expect better out of this team. It should not take this fucking long to turn this team around, regardless of whatever hole Ken Holland put this team in. This team should be a lot fucking better. A pretty frustrated way to end the season. But yeah, now it's the off season where there's a lot of questions. I'll say this, I do think Yzerman should come back for one more year, but I'll say this. If the Wings don't make the playoffs next year, then Yzerman 100% needs to be fired. Like, Yzerman's seat should be fucking scorching hot right now. Like, I'll say this, Steve Yzerman is on fucking thin ice next season. I'll just say that much there. He's on thin ice. Like, honestly, I love Stevie, but the excuses for him gotta stop at some point. Like, the excuses gotta end at some point. Like, it's gotta stop. But yeah, even as frustrating as this season is, well, hey, at least they got the Tigers and the Pistons throughout the summer until Lions football season begins. But yeah, and in terms of the Jared Goff chance, all I'd say is, it's not their fault that the Wings were an uninspiring product throughout the season to watch. Until Tom McClellan came in and we had the McClellan new head coach effect take over for quite some time. Just in the end, despite any positives there, the Wings just weren't good enough to make the playoffs. They especially collapsing in March for the third straight year. Like, the Wings got to find a way to not collapse in fucking March. Because the last 3 years, the main reason they didn't make the playoffs was because they collapsed in March. Mainly on 6 or 7 game losing streaks to open the month, while in a playoff spot. And now the Wings once again got to go into the draft lottery again, where they'll probably not move up and won't get a break in the lottery. As yeah, the one thing that also has plagued the Wings in this rebuild is not having good draft lottery luck. Pretty frustrating. But anyway, that wraps up for another Red Wings season. Now it's on to Pistons playoffs and then Tigers baseball until Lions football season begins in September. See you all later. I'm out.